who's currently in the room knows me, but I know that there are some people who signed up to receive the recording who don't know me, so I thought I'd give a brief introduction. My name is Sid Ponce. I am the Tucson Waldorf School educational support teacher. And for those of you who do know me, have heard me say this so many times, but what that means is I understand the physical body and the roles that it plays on learning. And so in the Waldorf School, instead of just traditional tutoring for educational support, I look to the body and the senses to help children develop their capacities for learning. Give me 1 second, my view still isn't the way I want it to be. Oh, there we go. All right, I got my view the way I want it to be. Awesome. I think a few people are trickling in. Just make sure as you come in, you can turn your audio and your video off, and there will be time at the end for some Q&A. So like I said, I am Sid Ponce, educational support teacher at Tucson Waldorf School. I always say this as I begin a meeting, but I have my notes here with me. Sometimes I talk a little bit fast. If that happens, feel free to jump in and let me know. Just like turn your mic on and let me know. Otherwise, save everything else for the end, because with my own executive dysfunction, interruptions sometimes just knock me so off track it's hard for me to get back on. And I love to say that. I love to begin with just being transparent about that part of myself. In hopes that it inspires other people to be brave, to put themselves out there, because I just spent too much of my life not pursuing things that I love because I was too afraid to do it or too afraid of being judged. And so now that I've gotten over that, I try to make sure that that I just say, hey, this is who I am, and everybody else is safe to be who they are as well. All right, so why are we here? Waldorf one-liners. I found myself saying this information over and over again, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should share this with other people just to help give a little bit of infrastructure to the classroom, to the home life. I get by in my job as a parent and a teacher based on these five-ish phrases that I'm going to give you tonight. And I say five-ish because I don't know if anybody saw the note taker that I sent out with it, but I have line 1, line 2, line 2.5, line 3A, line 3B, line 4, and line 5. So there's it's a 7-part lines, but when we get down to the lines, I'll break it down nice and slow for you so that you can write them down slowly. Also, I will send them to you in a printable at the very, very end, so you don't have to take notes if you don't want to. And for those educators, I will also send my outline in case you want to go back to your colleagues or even your parent body. You can use my outline if you would like to give this information and kind of the background information I'm going to give you as well. So you'll have that also. So what are we going to solve today? Just really streamlining parenting and classroom management, what it is to be in those roles when we're working with young children. Especially when stress plays a part of it, both for ourselves and for the children. It's really, really good to have some tools to rely on, not just for us, but for the children that they can rely on. And really just help find some fluency in that relationship, right? Create a culture that our children can trust. And so that's part of having boundaries. A lot of these lines are about creating a respectful boundary between adult and child. And the more they can rely on them, the more they know the expectation, the less they try to push them, right? It is the job of a child to just be like, where's the boundary? What am I allowed to do? Tell me about the world. And they constantly push and push and push. And the more we can say, here's the boundary, here's the rule, here's what the expectation is, the more they can live and settle and just have a sense of freedom. And so I know when our children feel that sense of freedom, it gives us that sense of freedom too, because we don't have to facilitate so much. Before I move in to the next part, I also wanted to just say briefly a little bit about different parenting styles. I'm going to say that the lines I'm going to offer you kind of fall into the respectful parenting, but there is RIE parenting, there's attachment parenting, there's Waldorf parenting, there is gentle parenting, and I think that everybody might resonate somewhere in one of those fields. But I, as a human, resonate, I think, mostly with Waldorf. That's why I'm a Waldorf teacher. But I don't like dogmatically live by every Waldorf rule. And I think that every parent is doing the best they can with what they know. And what they know could come from bits of places. And we all get to just choose our mosaic of how we want to parent our child. So the rules, or the lines that I'm going to give you, fall into any category. I just call them respectful. The reason I bring up the gentle parenting in particular is because I think that's a current movement where parents identify as a gentle parent. And in my perspective, what I see with those parents is that they're changing the boundary, they're changing the expectation based on how their child feels in the moment. And so what I mean by that is, you tell your child, put on your shoes. And then they start to cry, and the parent realizes that, their child feels a certain way. Okay, I'll help you put on your shoes. And in an effort to not stifle their child's inner being, they change the boundary and help their child put their shoes on. Now, what happens with that is our children learn, they're smart, and they begin to manipulate us. And so through these one-liners, we will be able to develop some boundaries with our children and to be able to maneuver when they are having feelings, but still hold the boundary, because that's what's the most important thing. The thing that I see the most with children whose parents struggle to hold respectful boundaries and that they constantly change the boundary is that the child is asking, tell me what the boundary is. And because it's changed so much, they can't handle a boundary. And then when they get a boundary from an educator, from their teacher, another parent on the playground, later in life when they get a boundary from an employer, reflecting on that, when they get that boundary, they don't know how to handle it. And those children that I see can't handle it often have what behaviors that people call oppositional defiance. So really moving forward, these are respectful boundaries to help build a relationship with our child so that they can feel safe in the world and we can have a sense of ease. Briefly, I'm going to talk about the brain and stress for a moment, because we only have access to things that are in our subconscious when we are stressed out. So we know that parenting is so stressful. If we don't have tools like one-liners and we're stressed out, we might outburst. We might, get frustrated so much ourselves that we don't know how to help our children, or and our children too, when they don't have habits and routines, they don't know how to maneuver themselves through it too. So having one-liners that we've practiced and rehearsed will be more of a subconscious habit for us. And the more we practice something, it embeds into our subconscious brain. So that's kind of the purpose of having these one-liners and being able to rely on them. What is Waldorf? Many of us, I think everyone in the survey said that they are affiliated somehow to Waldorf. And I briefly wanted to say, for those people who are going to be viewing this later, who might not know what Waldorf is, what I would like you to take away is that Waldorf values the inner experience of the child, and that it is rooted in the understanding of the developing human consciousness. I know that's a lot of words that I just said there, but I'll say it again, rooted in the understanding of the developing human consciousness. So I'd like to give you an example of what that is. Like, what does that even mean? If you have a child who is, or let's talk about a baby for a moment. We'll talk about a baby's consciousness. They say, whoever they are, that a child, when they're born, their consciousness, they associate themselves with a mother. They're attached to their mother. They don't have a consciousness that they are something else, that they are something separate. And they say that babies even often say the word dada or the other parent first, because they're so connected to the mother that the first other is dada, or the second parent. But we know that as the baby grows, they eventually, separate from the parent, and we can see that when they are around somewhere between 2 and 4, and they first say the word, they address themselves as I. Instead of me want a cracker, they say I want a cracker. That's just a little picture of their growing consciousness and seeing themselves as an individual. Another way to recognize the consciousness in a young child is when a parent exits the room and the child starts to cry, for example. And then the parent walks right back in the room and they get happy again. Parent exits and they cry. The child's consciousness doesn't have the ability, it hasn't expanded enough to know that what is beyond they can see exists. So when mom or dad exits the room, mom or dad doesn't exist anymore. So that's a way to observe it. Another way to observe the child's consciousness, I always love to use the 9-year change as an example. The 9-year change is like a classic, like Waldorf milestone, where children go through a huge developmental leap. And in the 9-year change, so that's around 3rd grade, the child has now separated from parent enough in their own inner being, so much so that they can actually see the nuances in adults in a new way that they weren't able to see before. For example, that younger child, when you tell them, oh, eat your peas and carrots, it's gonna make you nice and strong, you're gonna be like a superhero, and they can live into that image in their mind of a superhero. But at the 9-year change, they know that you're just manipulating them into eating peas and carrots. And so because they're now able to, at age 9, see, they have that change in consciousness, they get a lot of anxiety around 3rd grade. It's temporary, but it's just as they're beginning to see the adults in the world in a different light, and they have to readjust. I have a story about a 3rd grader last year who she got in trouble, and the next day at school, her mom drove her up, and her mom came in the office. I happened to be in there. I wasn't working in the office, but her mom said, oh, Ashley, it's a fake name. I said, Ashley won't get out of the car. She thinks she's in trouble. She thinks the teachers hate her. And I'm like, 9-year change. And I walk out to the car and I'm like, Ashley, things feel really hard right now, don't they? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, I know, it's just part of being 9 years old. 9 years old is really, really hard. But I want you to know that I am here for you, and anything you need through the day, you come find me. So if anybody's being unkind or if you don't feel good, come find me. And I was able to scoop her out of the car and into school in the way that her parent wasn't able to. One of the thing about being a parent and a teacher, I cannot parent my kid in the same way.
Have to have it tomorrow.
Oh, Charlene, thank you. Oh, I got it. There we go. I cannot parent my kid in the same way I can parent or teach my students, because there's blood, there's love, there's heartstrings attached. So that's just another layer of all of this. But again, I wish I had some of these lines back when I was a newer mom, because my daughter's 11 now. But I just remember reflecting when she was young and always just feeling insecure about what I was doing as a parent. So that's why I would like to share these one-liners with you. Anyway, that is what Waldorf is. It teaches and understands the child's growing consciousness. Okay. So one-liners, we talked about it already, to create loving boundaries, to help us through stressful situations. And that job of the children is really constant, to be constantly asking, where is the boundary? Okay, here are the lines. I promise I'll talk a little bit slower. Can everybody give me a thumbs up or something? Am I doing okay? There's a chat, let's see. Oh, good. Nope, we're good. Okay. Oh, good, I got a thumbs up, yay. All right, line number 1, and I'm sure you have all heard this one a million times if you are in a Waldorf school. But the first one is, I wonder, dot, dot, dot. Why is the sky blue? I wonder. Oh, why do I have to put my shoes on? I wonder. The I wonder one-liner helps the child be open. It feeds their lower parts of their brain, the ones in charge of imagination, of inspiration, of being more flexible. In common culture and in mainstream education, when a child asks a why question, or they ask any question at all, we as a culture are quick to give the cognitive answer. The sky's blue because, and the scientific reason, and you have to put your shoes on because first we have to go here and then we have to go here and let me tell you the schedule for the day. And all that information is feeding that top part of the brain that our culture really feeds to, where Waldorf education starts at the bottom and works its way up to feed the whole brain. And when a child's brain is being stimulated in that way, it kind of takes away from their experience of being able to maintain that imagination, inspiration, and all those other skills. So line 1 is, I wonder, just to keep an openness in your child. Line 2, and like I said, my numbers are weird. I have line 2 and I have line 2.5, but line 2 is, you can be a helper. You can be a helper. And this one is good for children who maybe they've finished their work already, or maybe your child is in the kitchen and you're cooking dinner and you need to focus on something, and you know they're wanting connection but you're busy. Like, you can be a helper and put the napkins on the table. You can be a helper. Line 2.5 is associated with this one, so that's why I have it as 2.5. You can help by. So this one is just a little bit more pointed. You can help by sitting in your chair. You can help by. I think that you can be a helper is really good in a social context. Because, like, for example, in a classroom, a child who finishes first and they're rocking in their chair and they have nothing else to do because they've finished already, you can be a helper. But you can help by, I especially like this one in support of other children. Actually, the first time I heard this one, you can help by, I was nannying, and there was, we'll just say daughter A was having a hard time. She had a job to do, she had to set the table or something, and she was just having a hard time. And her older sister, we'll call her Sister B, was like making fun of her or poking at her, and her mom said to Sister B, you can help by giving her space. You can help by. And I rely on that one a lot, especially in the classroom. Like, if a child is being a tattletale, I usually say, you can help by, focusing on your work, or you can, and I redirect them. So you can help by. Line 3A, there's gonna be a 3A and a 3B. 3A is, they forgot. The first time I used this one was when I had a first grader. He's older now, but I had a first grader, and we were getting in line, and he was running in line, and he pushed the person in front of him. And he didn't mean to. Usually children who have those behaviors, especially that young of an age, they just don't have, the mind-body connection. I think this child also has a little bit of like neurodivergence, which those children in particular have an extra hard time understanding their body and space and regulation. And I am like, oh my gosh, your hands, they forgot their kindness. And I took his hands and I'm like, they just forgot. And I think this was so therapeutic for this child, because immediately you can see the shame in his face that he did something terrible, and that he hurt his friend, and that he was bad. And if there's anything that I hope that anyone watching this takes away, is that there are no bad children. They're not intending any of those things, and these lines are meant to build the children up and to help them tap into their goodness and their kindness. So they forgot. Your hands forgot how to be gentle. I've also used this one when children are rude or unkind to other children or a child. And if I have one of the tattlers and they come up and I'm like, oh, Miss Ponce or Miss Sid, so-and-so did this to me. And I'm like, oh, they forgot their kindness today. They left it at home. I'll make a joke about it. And I think this eases, again, that pressure of, oh my God, I'm in trouble now. And I'm just like kind of creating the culture of like, yeah, they forgot. Sometimes I forget too. And it just makes, or it lets that child know that, we are all human, and it's okay to be human. When those behaviors become a pattern, like you have a child who forgets a lot, That's another. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. You would of course go into that a little bit deeper. But if it's like kind of a one-off and you see a child accidentally do something, they don't always need a talking to. Just they forgot, and that usually helps them re-find it, whatever it is that they forgot. So that was 3A and 3B. 3B is just me using it in a social context. Line number 4. Oh, I love this one so much. This one is perhaps my favorite. You start so I know how to help you. Your kid, you tell them to put their shoes on and they did it yesterday, they did it the day before, they know how to do their shoes because you've seen them do it. But in this moment, they say, I can't do it, I don't know how. And they're, having a meltdown or a behavior, and you start so I know how to help you. And that's reasonable, right? Children in particular, when they're growing and they're learning new things, they're using up their energy in a different way. So it's so reasonable for a child to not be able to do something, or to say they can't do something, or to think they can do something that they have done because they've just spent up all their energy. Typically a child is saying those things because they're tired, or they now have the cognitive awareness that what you're asking them to do is work, and they don't want to do that work. So you start so I know how to help you. And oftentimes, once they start, they'll actually finish the task. But this one in particular is not changing the boundary or the request. You're getting your shoes on, and I'm going to meet you there, wherever it is that you are. So that's why I love this one so much, because it's connection and it's follow through all at the same time. You start so I know how to help you. Number 5, I can't believe we're at the end already. Oh my gosh. Number 5. And I lied to you guys. This is not one line, it's 3. And I'll go very slow, very, very slow. Line number 1, you can. And I know that if you're a Waldorf educator in here, my ones that are in here, I know you know this one. You can. For example, I'll use the shoe tying example. You can, no I won't, I'll use a different example. Imagine your child is jumping on the couch. You can get on the floor now. Number 2, line number 2. You can get on the floor now, or I'm helping you. So line number 2 is you can do it, or I'm helping you. And I usually repeat it because I want them to know I'm clear that they heard the command. I'll say that part twice. And then the third one is I'm helping you now. So you can go on the floor. You can go on the floor, or I'm helping you. I'm helping you now. And this is like the holy grail. I use this so much. And this set of lines also, when it's repeated with everything that you're asking of your child, is creating that relationship of here's the request, the boundary is, and I'm going to make sure that we follow through on it. And that I'm helping you now, that can look however you want it to look. I one time was kind of trying to describe this on a Facebook parenting group, and I got chewed alive because in certain demographics, like I was describing earlier, whether it's respectful parenting or gentle parenting, helping your kid do anything goes against their free will in some parenting groups. So I think that I'm helping you now can be really subjective. You can help your child in whatever that means. For example, in the instance of helping your child off the couch, in a Waldorf classroom, we use kind of these open, warm gestures of an open hand of I'm guiding you off now. That's how it would happen in a Waldorf classroom. If they're unsafe, you just do it. But and that's what it is, right? We're creating a culture of safety for children by helping them follow through. If it's something where you're using this with another person's child, the I'm helping you now can be tricky. It could also be I'm helping by moving myself away. If there's a kid who's hitting, you can go over there and hit the air or whatever. You can go over there, or I'm helping, and then I'm helping by moving away from you now. So that's my example for that. That one can get a little tricky. So in a moment, I will open up to the chat, or it's already open, but I'll open up to questions for that if anybody wanted to run through some scenarios or questions in general. Before I answer questions though, I just wanted to say that these lines, this information that I've delivered tonight is an outside-in approach, meaning the parent or the caregiver is creating the space, is maneuvering the space, is maneuvering the behaviors in an external way to the child. But my work as an educational support teacher predominantly is inside out. And so when a child is having a behavior that we are trying to maneuver through these outside things, I recognize that the behavior is just an expression of their inward experience. You know, if you have a child who is constantly moving or talking and you just can't get them to settle, these can help with that in like kind of a behavioral management kind of way. But that doesn't solve the root of the problem. So what I will say is we can, as I open the chat and we discuss more, and you're welcome to stay too, and we can put cameras on for anybody who wants to chat a little further. My main work is inside out, the sensory systems, you know, what supports does that child have, you know, tell me more about them. And for the sake of this group, let's not get into specific children, but I do think that in my next webinar, I think my information that I might be delivering is more in that realm. How can we support the children based on their individual needs and their individual experiences in their sensory life? So I think that somebody had talked about class clowns in their survey. So hopefully some of these lines will help with your classroom management. But then I would love to chat even further about what it is that those children are particularly experiencing and how can we find a better outlet to meet whatever need that they are trying to express through their behavior. So this was quick, yay. I hope it was informative for those of you who need to run, but I would love to open it up to anybody who wants to chat or ask questions right now.
Yeah, I think that these lines are really useful for, you know, there's children that definitely want to please. And I see how these could all be very helpful. And I feel like intrinsically in this age, especially the girls, but the average child definitely wants to please, especially somebody that nurtures them and loves them. But yeah, with the child that has no will to please or to be a helper or
Yeah, and contextually too, Stephanie, I know that you are an educator, correct?
Yes, first grade.
Totally. So you're speaking in the context of being a teacher. And one of the tricky spaces with that is that the alignment of your parents to help cultivate that will, you know, a lot of it is in their education also. And it could be like you could do all the right things, but if all the right things aren't also being enforced at home, it just takes longer to penetrate. And I would love, you were the one in particular that I would love to maybe chat even separately so we can grapple a little bit more with your specific scenario. Yeah.
I just really appreciate what you said about when boundaries are being moved constantly, right?
Yeah.
And that really resonates with me.
Yeah, and I think
feel like they're trying to be very, the parents are on board and they're out there with them and they're like, how can I get help? But I feel like they're being too gentle in their parenting and they're not sticking to their guns. And then here we go.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's generational too. Our current first grade teacher is dealing with the same thing, which is why I was like decided to bring up the gentle parenting a little bit. Our current first grade class, a lot of parents label themselves as that, and with good reason, right? Like even in my generation, I think that we were so stifled as humans and now we're having children that we don't want to stifle our children in the same way, but it's almost an overcorrection. And so we have to somehow communicate with our parent bodies that boundaries and loving boundaries equals safety. And it can look however the parent wants to look. um, but yeah, Stephanie, you'll get this recording too, and you're welcome to share it with your parent body. So I hope that it can meet them in some way.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate how you laid that out
Yeah.
early on with that. And yeah, it really resonated with me. And then I feel like what you're saying with this generational gap, I see that they're wanting their children to be, anytime a child is asking what time it is or telling them how to build a clock, you know what I mean? Like they're giving too much information.
Yeah.
Like you're feeding to that upper brain. And
Yeah.
I was telling the story of, the walled city for Michaelmas with the dragon outside. And this child's like, Trump's wall, and couldn't drop it and kept going. And I'm like, how is this even in your consciousness? Like,
Yeah.
wow, there's really, and then I had spoken with one of the parents because it's a mixed household or blended household and two separate houses. And I told them that I wonder. And my students are always like, why do you always say that? And even my kids. And I want to be like super snarky and be like, I wonder.
I know.
I just don't say anything.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope too. What I was gonna say with some of the resources that I'm gonna send after this, the little printout, is that they are for, maybe I said it already, I don't know. They are for us as parents and teachers. Don't let your children see them, right? The less they, it's an art too, putting up boundaries. Like when our child begins to when they know our systems, then they know that we're manipulating them, right? Especially as they get older. That's why I advertise this as something that typically for children younger than that 9-year change, because they're still innocent enough, hopefully, that they still have that trust in the caregiver. But once they know what we're doing, man, we've lost it, right? Stephanie, are you public school or charter?
No, private Waldorf school.
Oh wow, okay, that's great. Us too.
Yeah, it's a private Waldorf school, and most of the parents want to be on board, but like you're saying, there's this, I feel like it's just like our government, right? The pendulum swings from one side to the other.
Yes.
And here they are swinging to that other side and going to such gentleness, and instead of just saying, because I said so, like, oh, you want to know the time? Let me tell you how to build that clock.
Yeah.
And you're just into that upper part of the brain, and
yep,
bringing anxiety in the children. It's just, they just have this, they can't stop talking because they can't process what they're hearing because it's so far removed from their understanding of the world. They don't have a prefrontal cortex yet that's developed enough to process this.
Yeah, they're just repeating what they've heard because that's the skills that they have, and they don't resonate. And of course, it causes anxiety. Yeah, it's such a tricky thing, and I'm guilty. I'm very lucky that my parent work is very minimal. I work in support of our faculty. So anything that I do that's parent related would be something like this, where I'm speaking to a group as a whole. But when I don't talk to parents directly about their children, unless it's after a developmental screening. But I think media also is relative, right? Super anxiety inducing. And that's kind of our culture too. How can we detox from the media in general, especially if your young children are knowing the news? That's clear.
And even just imagery, I feel like if a child's never seen gruesome imagery or inappropriate violent imagery, you can tell them a fairy tale of a witch being put in a barrel that's filled with nails and being rolled down the hill.
Yes.
So they don't even know how to take that.
Yep.
But when I'm like reading even a story like to my kids in my classroom, like I can't tell them, like, what was it? It was, I think the remember what fairy tale, but there was like a woman that wanted to eat people and had red eyes. And I felt that it would be a trigger for particular students that had seen inappropriate imagery. So I changed it a little to say that it was, a wolf that was transformed into a woman. So I feel like an animal eating people would be a little bit more understandable.
Yeah. Well, that's a good modification. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't seem, I can imagine them not tangentializing and fixating and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, eat them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to know more about your class in particular, Stephanie. So if you would love to do a separate call, I know I have some parents on here tonight too. So, when to talk more about our pedagogy and stuff would be lovely on a separate thing. But again, I want to thank you all. Did Devin and Margot, do you have any questions or anything you wanted to share?
No.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and I will email you this recording so you can have it and share it. And have a lovely week.
Hi.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you.